gang. Welcome again to this episode of The Ministry Show, where we have the great pleasure to continue our conversation with Steve Caton from the Giving Crowd. Valuable information about ministry opportunities and how to actually fund our future. Steve, man, let's dive in. How does the Giving Crowd come alongside a church to help?
In a really practical way, what we do is, and it looks a little bit different for each church, but obviously we've got a formula that has been time tested and proven. And so what we'll come alongside and do is we'll provide consulting, or what we call it coaching. And just like you guys,
we like that word.
Yeah, I know you like that word, and I like that word. So we call it coaching, and it's really just about helping them understand, how does this fit within the culture that God has created for them as a church. You can't shove a formula into a culture. You've got to adapt to the culture of the church. Okay, so that's what the coaching is about for us, is how do we do this in a way that fits their culture? And then we have to teach them. How do you have this conversation? How do you implement it within the context of what you're doing already? So there's the coaching piece. Then we provide some technology. It's called My Legacy Planner, and it's a tool that's super practical that helps somebody that goes, you know what, honey, we should probably take a look at updating our will. It helps initiate that conversation, and it allows you to take your assets and put it into a system that shows you, hey, what's the impact that we can make with our middle American assets? And what are the tax consequences of that? Do we save taxes for our kids if we do this? So it really illustrates that and creates a motivation to move forward. And then there's some other tools that we provide as well. But basically what we're doing is we're coming alongside the church with technology, with expertise, with coaching, and also that coaching extends to the congregant as well. At the end of the day, we're trying to help the church serve the people in the church, whether they're a middle American couple or it's somebody that God has entrusted with much more than that, and we want to help them be a better steward of what they've been entrusted with.
Yeah, well, with your guys' track record, Steve, at the Giving Crowd, I mean, you've helped hundreds of churches. What have you found? Are there a couple of keys to doing well in this area that you can share with us that,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So these two ingredients have to be in place, and then there's others that would kind of be ancillary to these two, but here are the two things. Number one, the church must have a clear and compelling vision that goes beyond the four walls of the church, okay? Because when somebody all of a sudden realizes the amount of money that can be passed to that church through their estate or through a current gift as a result of a sale of a business or a piece of real estate, the next question that they're going to ask themselves, if my church gets this amount of money, what are they going to do with it? And so if there's a lack of vision in terms of how we impact the community around us in some way, shape, or form, and that can be local, it can be international. I'm not dictating where it has to be, but there has to be a clear and compelling vision that kind of money is going to be put to good use. So that's number one. Okay. And so that's got to be clear.
That makes total sense.
I'm sure, yeah. The second thing would be, there has to be clear and consistent communication. So once we implement this strategy, it's not a one and done. Hey, let's have an event, or let's do 2 events this year and help people update their wills, or let's send out an email blast. It can't work that way. You have to implement this into the context of all the things that you're doing. It's got to be clear in terms of what you're communicating, and it's got to be consistent. It's a marathon, not a sprint. In the church world, we live in the campaign mentality oftentimes. It's like, let's raise a chunk of money to do this thing. This conversation has a much longer tail, so you have to keep doing it over and over again for a long time. And so that just requires intentionality, and you got to have good leadership buy-in, obviously, because a lot of times you're not going to see results immediately. It's going to take time. And so if we just try 3 or 4 times and go, we didn't see anything from that, and we quit, then it's not going to work.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you've talked to me in the past about other groups like universities or large parachurch ministries in particular, hospitals in the area, who are approaching people that are in our church anyway with some of this stuff. And I'm like, they're not approaching me. No, I'm just kidding. So talk to me about what's going on in this ecosphere already anyway.
When you think of endowment, you pretty much always think of what?
Universities.
Right, universities, sometimes hospitals as well. You have these hospitals that have big endowments. When you think of it in those terms, yes, that's what we're talking about. So colleges and universities, hospitals, healthcare, those organizations have been doing this, what they call planned giving, for many, many years. And so they're reaching out to us. I know the University of Georgia reaches out to me to give money all the time. And the University of
And
Colorado.
they're not shy about
I
it,
know.
are they?
And University of Colorado's reaching out to me. My kid hasn't even graduated yet. I'm already sending you guys plenty of money.
One year I kept every envelope that I got that was a solicitation for funding from November 1st to December 31st.
Yeah.
How many envelopes do you think I had?
Oh my gosh. I'm going to guess.
This is 1 year now. I'm talking 1 calendar year.
1 calendar year. I'm going to guess you probably got at least one a month. So 12?
You're way low.
Really?
Yeah.
How many?
I had over 100
Oh my
envelopes. And I'm not talking about a whole year. I'm talking about from November 1st of a current year to December 31st of a current year.
Oh my goodness.
I had over 100 envelopes from local, regional, and national groups because of our natural propensity towards generosity during the holidays.
Right.
And that was only, 2-month window.
That's amazing.
I just thought, well, I'm going to save the ones I get.
Okay.
Now, clearly I can't give to 100. Some of the groups were multiple envelopes.
Right.
But still.
Well, it illustrates the point, right? That we are hearing from plenty of organizations, and we're hearing from our colleges and universities and hospitals about not just giving cash, but thinking about the estate planning side of it, right? So if no one's ever talked to me about that before, and the only person talked to me about that is my alma mater, I'm going to go, well, yeah, that's a good idea. I'll go ahead and put them in my will. The church is silent on the issue. And so because the church is silent, very few people are leaving money to their church in that context. I've had so many conversations with pastors who have told this story about people in their church who passed away, and they were faithful givers for many, many years, and the pastor was there for all those significant moments in their life. And then when they passed away, they left a big percentage of their estate to Texas A&M, and it's frustrating, but that's what happens when we're silent. When the church doesn't ask, then the church is not going to receive. And we're just trying to create an easy and comfortable way to ask.
Yeah, I think there's a Bible verse pretty clear on that. Ask and you shall receive. Anyway, speaking of that, how do you bring it up? I'm a pastor at a church. I might have, it doesn't matter how many people, it can be awkward even to implement this conversation or this ministry within your church or that kind of thing. So help us with that.
Yeah, that's the real practical stuff, right? So again, because we're trying to dovetail with existing stewardship conversation, I'll just give you some practical examples. So one of the churches we're working with right now, they had 6,000 people that just went through Financial Peace University.
6,000.
6,000 people. So it's a little church. And they basically dovetailed with the FPU content. They dovetailed with some content we provided to help people think outside of just the cash flow. And so we just provided some content for them that they put inside some of the content they were providing with the Financial Peace University content that just said, hey, we want you to be also aware of the fact that God's entrusted you with things like home equity, life insurance policies, and retirement funds. And those things can also be mobilized for kingdom purposes. Here's how to do that, and basically give them an on-ramp to learn more about it. So that's one practical way to do it. This You Only Die Once curriculum is another practical way to do it. That can be deployed in the context of small groups. It can be done as an event, over a 5 or 6 week period. And that opens up the dialogue naturally for us to think about this asset-based conversation, right? Then there's also things that we can do, like we will have events where we will go on site with some of our church clients and we will do a workshop. We call it business and property owners. And this is one of the ways that we surface the people who are kind of outside of the average, people who've been trusted with businesses and property and real estate. And we'll just do a workshop to help them understand, again, the things that their financial advisors aren't telling them, which is how can these things be mobilized for kingdom purposes to both improve legacy as well as reduce taxes. And we're oftentimes bringing content they've never heard. So we can do that too. We can do that on site. We can do that virtually through web-based conversation. So there's a number of different ways that we do it, but it's dovetailing with existing curriculum, existing programming in the church, and then where it's appropriate, we'll implement some new things as well.
Well, it sounds like you're saying the principles are there, and you customize the principles to the church's
Absolutely.
needs. Oh,
yeah.
that's really
the
cool.
Principles have been around for a long time, right? That's how Harvard has, billions of dollars in their endowment.
Yeah.
Because this has been going on for many years. The principles just haven't been applied in the church world all that well. That's what we're trying to do.
Although the Giving Crowd has been doing it for how long?
So the Giving Crowd, the parent company of the Giving Crowd, which is called Fulcrum Philanthropy Systems, has been around for 7 years, actually, as of last week. And the guys who started that company have been doing planned giving for a combined over 50 years. I mean, a long time. One of the guys started the foundation at Dallas Theological Seminary. They've been doing it a long time, but they've been really burdened by the fact that the local church has largely been silent and on the sidelines with respect to this. And so the Giving Crowd was formed to address that need.
Well, and I know your heart when you say that isn't that pastors are missing. It's not a training that is in the seminary or anything like that. So how would you find out about it? Through interviews like this. It's almost like it's this little secret trap door that's somewhere. And how would somebody find out more? How could they connect with you or part of your team to uncover if this might be a good move for them in their church?
Well, Chris, I'm always a big fan of only giving one answer to that question.
Oh, good idea. Yeah.
And so that would be our website, which is givingcrowd.co, not .com. You have to leave the M off of it.
So I want to repeat it. Make sure I heard it right.
Okay.
Giving Crowd, all spelled out, .co.
That's right.
No M.
No M.
givingcrowd.co. So they'll have contact information there. You can find out even more information, do some reading, and I'm sure there's all kinds of connections on there too.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
right. That's just a jumping off point to learn more.
Bottom line this for us, if you would. I'm pastor so-and-so, or I'm an associate pastor. Maybe I'm a board member listening to this. Maybe I'm just on a church staff team or volunteer team, and it's like, oh, that might be something that I would need. What do I do other than go to the website?
First thing would be kind of a mindset statement. And that is many times when we have this conversation, we always try to mentally put it in a box that we are familiar with. And the box that people try to put this in is almost always estate planning. Okay, so they just think in terms of, this is about money that we're not going to see for 10, 20, 30 years. Okay, so it's real important to know that this is partially about that. This is about money that comes downstream and funds future ministry, which is a phrase you use that I love. But it's also about surfacing money today. So this has to be viewed as this is a way that we can surface resources for the kingdom today and build a pipeline of resources for future ministry. So that's the first thing I would say. Make sure you think of it that way, because it's not just one or the other. It's both.
I'm going to just interrupt you for a quick second to give a personal testimony in that regard.
Okay.
Again, as we've talked, and then Kathy and I have looked at different things, we've adjusted a couple of things, but we gave the second largest one-time gift we've ever given to any single church at the end of last year because of this conversation.
Is that right?
Because we looked at and we went, holy cow, man, God's been so good to us. It was just a natural thing to just give a portion of that now versus later.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is a thing that happened to me personally, just so you know.
Wow.
So you guys
That's
are making
awesome.
a difference.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing in terms of what they need to be thinking about. That's a mindset, right? So go into it with that mindset. And then number two, you can't really put this, again, you can't put this in the same bucket that you've put things in before. Like it doesn't really fit into the conversation about capital campaigns, although it certainly can be a part of a capital campaign, okay? So you have to come at it with a fresh set of eyes and understand that you've got to make a commitment to this. Just like if you implement a discipleship ministry in your church where you're trying to help people over time grow closer to Christ, that isn't hey, let's just do a class in the fall. Okay, we have to do this on an ongoing basis. And that's the other thing I would say that's super important with this strategy is you got to commit to it for a long time to really see the results. And that doesn't mean it's going to take a ton of time. It just means let's be intentional for seasons of time. We're trying to create a movement of generosity, not a moment of generosity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well said. It sounds like, too, the idea, at least from my perspective, is it's often easy to focus on what we don't have instead of what we do have. But when we take the time to focus on what we do have, I was shocked at how blessed that I am. And my wife the same way, and grateful and thankful. And the natural outpouring of that is to be generous.
That's right.
And so I appreciate the work that you're doing to help the church not only get stronger, but do more to advance the kingdom of God, enhance it, and really see some great things, not only now, but in the future. So thanks for the great work that you're doing at the Giving Crowd. I know it's a long road to hoe, so
yes,
but keep going. Eventually we get there, and the Church of Christ is going to be so much better off for it.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I appreciate that encouragement very much. And I want to say to your story, here's the other thing that happens, and this is really kind of a key point because this is why we named it the Giving Crowd.
Oh.
When that happens, what you just described that happened for you and Kathy, what we've seen is when that happens for people, they tell other people. They don't tell everybody, but they'll tell the people who are closest to them, people in their small groups, people in their inner circle. They'll share that revelation and that blessing that happened for them. And then those people will start thinking about it too. And that's how it creates this movement and hence the crowd.
So Steve, I know your model for helping churches and their people is way different than anything I've ever even heard of. It's almost one of those things that I don't believe, but I do believe, but it's just really pure and crisp. So will you explain that to us?
I'm glad you brought that up because it's a key distinction and it is often misunderstood. So let me see if I can lay this out really simply. So our client is the church or the nonprofit. That's who pays our fees. The people who end up really benefiting from what we do are the congregants in a church or the supporters of a nonprofit organization because we're coming alongside those people and really helping them to learn how can I be the most generous version of myself possible, okay? So when we have those conversations with the individuals, and I'm speaking especially of the guy that you said that you're not, Chris, the guy with the airplanes and the real estate, right? So when we help that individual, we can do it with absolutely no conflict of interest because we're not selling life insurance. We don't manage assets. We don't do donor advised funds. We have no product to sell those people. So we can literally just sit with them and be in a posture of serving them. What is it that's going to be best for them? What is it they're trying to accomplish in terms of legacy for their family and those kinds of things? What are their values? And then we can help them figure out what's best for them. And we have absolutely no other agenda.
Boy, that gives me great confidence as a pastor or church leader to go, oh, I can trust this process.
Yes. And then what happens is that individual will come back to you, the pastor, and say, Chris, holy cow, thank you so much for introducing me to those guys at the Giving Crowd because they helped me think about something no one else was helping me think through, and you are the one who introduced me to them. Thank you.
Yeah. What a great model for really ministry. This is a financial ministry that helps propagate the kingdom, so
yeah, thank you.
Kudos
Love
to you
that
guys.
Word.
Yeah, great stuff. So thanks for explaining that. And again, for those of you in the audience here today, Steve Caton from the Giving Crowd, it's been an honor to have you with us. Yeah, I'm sure we'll do it again. Maybe next time we'll be more normal and yuck it up a little bit.
I hope so.
Well, that wraps it up for our time with Steve Caton and the Giving Crowd, at least for the ministry show. However, Steve is going to be at the Build Gathering coming up in November. If you liked what you heard, you can come to his session at the Build Gathering. And then next week, Pam and I are going to dive into little excerpts and what this might mean and how you might be able to apply some of this information to your ministry right away. So we'll see you next week here at the Ministry Show. God bless.